God Emu is about to face off against the sun god Luffy and the god of the underworld, Loki? Not exactly what I had on my Elbaf bingo card when the arc started, but that's what we're getting it seems, and I'm pretty excited I gotta say. Loki and Ragnir's epic combo attack this chapter, that's already gonna change the game since apparently it might be able to destroy and damage Emu's soul. Let's just really get after it, dude. There's a lot to talk about. And really to kick things off, I just need to get more into Loki here because, man, I'll be real with you, I've had so much time now to obsess and overanalyze things lately. The holidays are a little bit of a blessing and a curse. You probably know what I mean. Yeah, no? And while I kind of spent several hours pulling my hair, all of my hair, making conspiracy boards and wandering through the vast, cold and desolate plains of hell, you know, what you do in winter, I actually think I came onto some stuff with Loki specifically. But how, Manu? We don't even know yet what his devil fruit technically is yet. Well, people who say that, kind of wrong, man. We do know so much. We kind of know it all at this point. All right, for example, look at this panel of Loki here, right? You see those horns, they do look pretty awfully sharp and curved, yeah? Yeah, well, those aren't just his ancient giant horns. I mean, sure, they are definitely his Loki horns, probably poking through his full zone or hybrid form, since we do know with characters like Lucci, Kaido, Yamato, and, you know, pretty much all the other people who have been busting out their zone forms recently, that they all do keep their basic iconic colors and identity traits. But then I actually decided to take a closer look at his horns again and realized I've seen these horns before somewhere, and I really don't know how I didn't catch this sooner. Like, I'm gonna do Dobby later and punish myself by slamming my hands in the oven door or something. You'll notice it resembles the dragon on the front of the new giant warrior pirate ships, and also perfectly resembles the giant Nidhogg that appears when killing him creates it from the kid's nightmares. Now, I know that some wise guy's gonna say that the horns are technically facing the wrong direction, and trust me, I have realized that. That's what I'm talking about. Wow, too meta. All right. But you see, I think that Loki kind of circumvents this because he has his normal horns that go that way. So while the OG Nidhogg or Nika Dragon thing have horns that go one way, I think that Loki can still be the very same thing. And I think when you take what I just said and actually just was thinking about weeks ago and combine that with everything that we just learned in chapter 1171, such as Loki apparently having the ability to fly, use giant ice attacks, and all those stuff we've like previously discussed, like his position in the underworld at the Adam's Tree bottom, right? And his role as bringer of Ragnarok. Can we just all totally agree now 100% that Loki just is gonna be the Nidhogg, right? The giant evil dragon that eats the roots of Yggdrasil in Norse mythology and embodies death and destruction for great liars, betrayers, and evildoers, who, by the way, also lives in the icy hell of Niflheim. Yeah, and no wonder that Ida would have been scared of her own son seeing those eyes if she knew what that meant. We do agree? All right, sick. Cool, because that's gonna pave some insane paths throughout this video. Like, for example, why does this Nidhogg figure also seem to resemble the giant dragon raining down on the right side of the mural here, right? This one? Yeah. It kind of makes you wonder if maybe these things are all like connected in a way that we've all been completely overlooking in the mural. Yes, the mural. My eternal curse and blessing. This panel, my god. Well, could it be that Loki's claim of being the sun god actually isn't wrong, like we've talked about before? Like, we've all kind of assumed that he would change his mind once he's seen Luffy, or that he has a different version of Nika or something, but I'm kind of starting to think that maybe Loki's true power is the real power or the real form of Nika. Now look, I'm not saying that Luffy isn't Nika, but I think that maybe there's some nonsense going on here that Oda's cooking, and I do think, but at least I hope, that once I explain to you what I mean, you'll at least see where my brain is getting up here, and then you can decide for yourself if you follow along or, you know, call me crazy in the comments. Either works. Happy with either. Luffy, you see, is described as having the appearance of Nika, the rubbery body of Nika, and obviously he resembles Joy Boy very much. He's got the drums of liberation, expression, the big smile, you kind of get the idea, right? The only thing that he's really lacking is the baddie of liberation, Nefatari Vivi, but Boa Hancock's a pretty good substitute, as far as I'm concerned at least. I don't know, man. I'm kind of frustrated here because something kind of feels out of place with Luffy in general. There are some giant-sized things that I can't get over with the entire mural, and something specifically that Emo reveals in chapter 1171 that also kind of made my tummy rumble in a way that didn't sound very good. And while, yes, I definitely did eat some bad curry last night, it turns out, I don't think that's the problem yet. It's probably going to be one, but I think that's a later Manu problem. Have fun with that. Now, here is what I can't really get over. Loki, as you probably know, seems to represent that second part of Nika that the Elbaphians keep commenting on, right? You probably know that. We talk about it a lot on the channel, but in case you're still getting caught up or something after the anime went on its break, some of the giants praise Nika as a liberator, just like with, Luffy, but many others seem to view Nika as a god of destruction. And when you really look at the mural, it might become pretty clear why. Because when it all is said and done, there is just no other figure on the right side of the mural that could represent Nika besides the giant dragon coming down from the heavens and fighting with the Hellflame Serpent. I mean, we do know it's not the Hellflame Serpent, that's the other thing here, and really there is no other figure in that mural that kind of makes sense besides the giant dragon, who also seems to visually tie into Loki. So my thought is that maybe Loki actually has a fruit that embodies the physical form of Nika, or at least how the Elbaphians described it, right? We do know based on Vegapunk's comments at least that, according to his personal theory, devil fruits were somehow created out of people's dreams and ambitions, which kind of makes sense. It's a beautiful commentary on children in society. I think it's this entire just do it philosophy, and I do think what really actually sent me down this entire spiral about Loki and his devil fruit actually comes from something I was reflecting on while I was still back in Europe for the holidays, right? Spending some time with my family. When I was younger, in my childhood, in, good old Germany, I didn't dream about being a content creator, believe it or not. I didn't think that I would do One Piece for work. If you're an adult watching this, you probably didn't dream about doing your current job either. I mean, you probably dreamed about being like, I don't know, like becoming Goku or a Power Ranger or like, I don't know, maybe just whatever your mom and dad did for work, right? For me personally, when I was a kid, and I'm not kidding, this is a real thing, me and my best friend had so much fun hanging out and playing games, and like, we're just like out in nature, building like shit and like fighting with swords. We were like, when we grow up, we're gonna live together and just, do whatever we want and start inventing some stuff. And that's legitimately what I thought I'd be doing with my life until I was probably 12 or 13 years old. And I mean, then when I got a little bit older, I thought I might become a doctor because I come from a family of doctors, and boy, did some people dodge a bullet of me not cutting them open. Will I say that? Like, imagine you're a surgeon coming in to do like a brain surgery, and before like they put the anesthesia on you, he's like, yeah, by the way, do you read the latest chapter of One Piece? I'm gonna be reading it while I'm operating on your brain. My point is, if you were given the chance to become anything you wanted, anything, you'd probably pick something pretty awesome. And I really think that that might be the key to actually understanding the legendary Elbap fruit. I think we'll get a crazy reveal at some point in the story that it is this spiritual embodiment of the image of Nika from the first world that we saw in the mural. It's the giant dragon with the ability to conquer the Hellflame Serpent. Someone, Harold and Loki's ancestor probably, wanted to be that sick god that they heard about in their fairy tales growing up, and that's why it can conquer the Hellflame of Imu's Abyss, because whoever wished for this fruit, by nature of wanting to be the form of Nika, accidentally or maybe on purpose, created that power as a byproduct to override the Abyss. But Joy Boy, who uses the Nika fruit specifically, may have just wanted to have the powers of Nika, the power to liberate, be goofy, all that funny jazz, right, that Luffy's doing. Imu, as I mentioned, is the other part of why I think that Loki's fruit being a sort of Nika dragon thing is like the true nature of Elbap's legendary treasure too, because in chapter 1171, we get some solid confirmation of something that I think we've all sort of realized was the case, but now got actually confirmation for, which is that Elbap is somehow tied to the D initial. Which, I mean, like, yeah, duh, like they're on the mural and they worship Nika. was a little bit obvious, I think. I kind of proposed a while ago that Harold's true name might have just been Harold D. whatever their last name is. What's their last name? Giant, maybe? Harold the Giant? Loki the Giant? It's a pretty good joke. Laugh. Come on. Come on, please laugh.
Please clap.
All right, I'll just keep going with the video then. Well, I think one thing that's a little bit off here, obviously, is how involved was the royal family of Elbaf, or Elbaf in general, with the D-Clan? And why, when Zebek showed up on the island, did Harold not just immediately hit him with an, oh, sick, you've got the D initial? Elbaf loves themselves some D. We are huge D guys over here. Any type of D is welcome. Well, I think that's because maybe, just maybe, Elbaf isn't connected to the D-Clan or the D initial through that initial. I'm kind of starting to think that instead, based on Loki's fruit and the deep historical roots of the country throughout things like the laboratory, which is giga ancient, the mural, the Harley text, that they are the original worshippers of D. Or maybe, just maybe, they quite literally are the D. Ah, look, Manu's spouting some weird things again. Now, what do I mean by that, right? Well, longtime theory heads online, like some of you are familiar with all of the very popular interpretations of the D-Clan, right? It could stand for dreams or dreamers, which kind of lines up with that very iconic Blackbeard line about dreams during his introduction, and Vegapunk's theory on devil fruits coming from dreams. But then there have been other theories. The D could be the Dawn clan, based around Roman's dawn and bringing the new dawn and the sun god Nika. Then there is the devil or demon clan idea, which kind of ties into the devil fruits and Emu calling all the D's devils, and the fact that D-Clan members are always described as demons by the other characters. Now, to me, the best part about this entire Elbaf idea is that it kind of doesn't matter, you know, which option is true and what the D actually stands for, because all of these things, dreams, dawn, devils, laughter, they are all deeply tied to Elbaf in some way, shape, or form. Big ancient giants with scary horns and ferocious power sounds like a devil to me, especially when they have the underworld in their homeland. Then you've got dreams, and in this arc we are seeing dream monsters making an appearance, a laboratory from 3,000 years ago that may have even created partly devil fruits, and the concept of dreams are an absolute center focus of this arc, more than usual I would say in One Piece, because, you know, dreams are kind of everywhere, but Elbaf particularly. And then obviously the worship of Nika, the sun god, and the entire arc starting out with that Spider-Man meme, everyone's a sun god, you're a sun god, I'm a sun god too, and Loki saying that he's going to destroy the world, which we now know from the Harley text, is probably what will actually bring the new dawn. Like Oda toying with us, he's like, I'm gonna destroy the world, but it's actually a good thing. Ha! Didn't expect this. Now, my thought now is that when Emu says that Elbaf is D, they aren't saying that the Giants were part of the D-Clan specifically. No, I think it's much bigger than that, and that Emu meant straight up that they are what started the D-Clan to begin with. Remember, for a long time, we used to just think that Joy Boy might have been a giant, but I do think that that's off base. Nika himself, though, seems way more likely at this point to have been a giant, someone who was around way before the Void Century ever started, or even the second world of One Piece ever started. I mean, the timelines do line up. The mural depicting the first and second worlds indicate that they have some deeper knowledge about the entire planet's ancient history, going back way further, and if the big hero of the first world was a giant, then it does make a ton of sense that Elbaf now worships Nika too. And compared to many other places we've been to now, they distinctly do not worship Joy Boy, they instead worship the sun god from their history instead, which, to come kind of full circle to my original point here, this would kind of explain why Loki views himself as the current sun god too, and why his fruit seems to be based on the dragon design in the mural and based on the ship. Because Loki is fulfilling his dream of becoming Nika, and something that we do know childhood Loki aspired to see or be a part of, since he thought that Zebek was gonna be Nika and wanted to join him so damn badly. Now, to be fair, Zebek was pretty goated with it. I'd want to be his groupie too, but today isn't about Daddy Zebek. It's all about Loki, and something that I haven't punched in on just yet enough, I think, is the true might of this character, because, my boy, it's cold as hell. No, like, literally, I seriously mean it's ice cold, and based on the underworld. I'm specifically referring to his awesome new attack we get in this chapter, Niflheim, which is like a very sick name for a clearly very powerful move. I won't lie, I'm kind of obsessed with it, but it also raises so many questions, I think, right? For example, what actually is Loki's powers and what actually is Ragnir's power, right? That cheeky little squirrel hammer is very mighty, and I love it so much. I want a Ragnir plushie, right? But Loki specifically seems to say, show him what you've got to Ragnir when he attacks the Draugr at the end of 1171. And also the chapter is titled Ragnir, so when we get the big epic freezing attack, which does line up with the shattering effect that we actually saw on Herald at the end of chapter 1170, I don't know about you, I'm kind of thinking it's probably more Ragnir-centric. But we also know that when Loki brings the hammer down, Reinhardt style, it's also capable of unleashing these devastating island-sized lightning strikes, so really, at this point, I just really can't tell how this is all working just yet and whose power is whose. Is that like Loki's devil fruit allowing him to control elements like most mythical zones and he's channeling them through Ragnir? As you probably realize, there are a couple of options here, and I kind of quickly want to run through them with you, right? Since they do kind of all matter, no matter which of them is actually true. We have option A, which is basically what I just ran through. Loki's base power includes lightning and ice, and when he wants to slam it down big style, he just pushes that power and his haki into Ragnir, which then acts as like an amplifier and pushes out an even bigger attack on its end. Pretty straightforward, I'd say. Then there is option B, where Ragnir is doing all the elemental stuff all by itself, and Loki is just the key to activating it. Now in this situation, Loki would be applying his haki into Ragnir alone, and then Ragnir, which has the powers of ice and lightning and maybe even more, is able to unleash it using Loki as a sort of giant battery, I guess, which in theory could be based on whatever special thing is going on with Loki's eyes, and like that is not his devil fruit obviously, so there might be some crazy powers he has just by birth. And then of course there is also option C, which is that Ragnir can just do this all by himself and Loki is just wielding a very broken hammer. No added bonuses, it just needs to be swung by someone worthy. And Loki's doing that. Now, as fun as that would undoubtedly be, that kind of seems like the least likely option at this point to me, because I kind of feel like Loki being the first person to wield both the hammer and the fruit for the first time in millennia, or at least like hundreds of years, right, is a very essential part of it. He's a key participant in this ability, and I just can't imagine Ragnir being that broken just by itself, especially because the Lokster here mega bonked it in chapter 1170. So I think it's either option A or option B, and if you, I don't know, threaten me to put me in a closet with Magellan and there is no toilet paper, I would probably guess it's option A. However, I will admit that there is a good chance that each of these has one of the powers. Like, either Loki has lightning and Ragnir has ice, or Ragnir has lightning and Loki has ice powers. I think that could be very well the case, but I really do hope that Loki has both or neither, just because I kind of want him to feel different than other characters who already occupy a very similar role to him. I'm talking, for example, about Yamato. Yes, I love Yamato, but they've already got the cool ice powers and are also in that sort of crew member, but also not really category that Loki might fall into at the end of this arc. And so I really hope that the parallels end there and they both don't end up having the same ice powers, because that'd be a little bit lazy on Oda's part in my opinion. Now, while I was reading the chapter, I also had the very wild idea that Loki might even have more powers than just the two elements, and that one would stem from him tapping into the various realms of Norse mythology. You know, something where you could get like a sick fire attack representing Muspelheim or something of the sort. Gets a little bit messy when you start to do the full 9 power breakdown, so I think that those three make the most sense to me and probably would make more sense since Elbaf's Atom Tree only has 3 tiers as well, not like 9 of them. But I also quickly want to circle back to that Niflheim attack because it really caught my eye and kind of triggered me. Sorry, I meant triggered my theory senses. I got that special little tingle, you know, that you need to become a One Piece theory YouTuber, I guess. And I think it deserves a more in-depth analysis, is all I'm saying. Editor, bring up the chapter title card for part 2. Loki's power and their very unique ability to override the Holy Knight immortality is pretty sick, right? I mean, dude, I really don't know how else to put it. It makes me kind of amped for the end game and the rest of the Elbaf saga. I already love Loki, as you know, so knowing we'll get more of him has me kind of acting like Luffy when he sees a big old pile of meat. Fun fact, I went to a Chopper collab cafe recently with my friend Emirichu, and they had the different character traits, like the EFPN. I'm the same one as Luffy. Yeah. Really fun. Where were we? Luffy powers. Oh yeah. Scopper also alluded to this power being something unheard of that Loki has, and after seeing Imu's panic once Loki took his pop-up out, it's pretty clear that there is some sort of greater force at play here. Because just remember that a teenage Loki was able to pull off what Roger and Garp combined could not do after all. Not to be a hater here, but I kind of doubt that this kid was outranking the GOATs of that era at that point, so my guess would be that his Nidhogg fruit powers played the most important part here, right? But I kind of started to realize that maybe I could uncover the actual reason it worked too, and have it be not that boring of a video. Since I've already covered the big hog, Nidhogg, I can now skip right to the part where the dragon consumes souls. Like a kid in a candy store. This giant shadowy dragon serpent thing slurps up the souls of the condemned in mythology. Your oath breakers, your classic murderers, and Stacy, who shot me down for the winter dance in 6th grade. Particularly Stacy, I hope. Pretty much anyone that is rejected by cosmic order. So it should come to me as no surprise, and to you not either, that Loki can hard counter Imu and the world government, since their entire vibe is pretty much dark pacts, defying the laws of the universe and nature, and being just stinky mean guys. But this of course brings us to something else that's been quietly building in One Piece for a quite long time, and with all the key moments in Elbaf, it's pretty much impossible to ignore. Big Loki is not the first character whose ice attacks feel a little bit wrong. You know what I mean? Like when your buddies tell you that girl definitely likes you, but she's out of your league and it's just not really adding up why she should. Loki's power isn't just strong, and there is a reason I said it was wrong. It's not like being incorrect on a test or morally evil. I think it's wrong in the sense that his ice doesn't seem to behave like a regular elemental ability, like I guess the most obvious one would be Kuzan. That guy has normal ice. Normal, if it's normal, freezing the entire ocean, but the ice is normal. But Loki's now the third character in the story who hasn't eaten an ice fruit to my knowledge, who's exhibited an ice power that seems to go way deeper than the body, straight into the soul and the spirit realm. If you want, I guess you could say he's got that Yu-Gi-Oh! Shadow game Mind Crush style powers, because now in the story we've got Loki, my boy Brook, and Saint Venus Juro, three very unalike characters who all use very chilling attacks that don't just damage bodies, but seem to reach past the body and interfere with the soul itself. And once we actually line these three characters up, the pattern becomes actually pretty hard to deny. Oda wants us to form this connection, I think, since it's been a key aspect of all the three last arcs that we've gotten. Brook and Wano, Venus, Juro, and Egghead, and now Loki in Elbaf. Alright, for starters, Brook's ice abilities, they've just never made sense and been normal. It's always kind of given me the runs. From the moment this power was first introduced, his powers have been tied to death, the afterlife, and the soul leaving the body, but also ice. I mean, his devil fruit is technically more accurately titled the underworld fruit in Japanese. We talked about that in this video here. So I kind of think that that's a great place to start investigating the chilling depths of hell. But just very quickly for you, in case you're confused, there is a reason why the Yomi Yomi no Mi is a little bit misunderstood, I think. Basically, the name of the revive fruit in Japanese is the Yomi Yomi no Mi, which comes from a verb meaning to return back to life, to revive, right? So that kind of makes sense, but the real word that the verb comes from is the Yomi, the underworld in Japanese Shinto mythology. I'm actually reading a book on Shinto mythology right now. Boy, let me tell you, there is so much stuff that connects to One Piece there. It's not even funny. Like the different gods and, the sun goddess and like their connection to the moon god and the storm god and how they might be different from the earth god. And it's a whole thing. I've got so many ideas for videos. Anyhow, big point is the sun god themselves, Amaterasu, in Japanese Shinto mythology, was they didn't get locked away. They actually ran away because their brother Susanoo, the storm god, was raging so much. So they actually fled to the underworld in order to just get some peace and quiet. That, of course, led to the sun being gone from the world, right? And the other gods tried to get Amaterasu to come back out of the cave with a big mirror, which is the same mirror that then became part of the Japanese regalia, and that's the same one that, Kizaru uses for his attack name. Anyhow, that same underworld that the sun vanished into, the sun goddess, is named Yomi in Japanese, and I think Brook's fruit has been mistranslated, and it's much more likely to be the underworld fruit, not just the revived fruit, because if it was just the revived fruit, Brook would have come back to life, and that's it. But he gets so many crazy other new powers tied to the underworld, and again, I think that makes the most sense. Also, I realized while I was telling the story that I kind of probably should make a video or just at least talk a little bit about the idea that the sun goddess being in the underworld might be related to this very concept. I mean, we can quickly talk about it right now, but I think it's very fascinating now that I just thought about it, that if the sun goddess actually, went into the underworld and that's what caused the sun to vanish, and now we're waiting for Luffy to bring back the dawn. Could it be that the sun, whether it's the forbidden sun or an actual person like the sun god or sun goddess, I've speculated before that maybe Nika wasn't the real sun god because it's written with the quotation marks in the mural as the only of the four gods. So maybe there is a person that actually went to a place that is the underworld in One Piece where all these characters are pulling their powers from. Maybe that's how Imu won, by sealing away the sun goddess inside the abyss or inside somewhere else. And the role literally of bringing back the sun and bringing back the new dawn is just freeing that person from the underworld. Pretty fun idea. I think something like that must be in Oda's mind, maybe in like some different way, shape, or form. If you have good ideas, let me know, but just something that very randomly explaining this popped into my head. Little detour, let's return to the video, because this, I think, explains why Brook can actually harm things that should otherwise be absolutely untouchable for other One Piece characters. Homies, soul constructs, and the various manifestations of Big Mom's power, and since he's all about the underworld and so seems to be Loki, he was in the underworld, we can draw that through line between their powers. Not to mention that Brook could be, as again we said in this video, a former Blade of God, or at least tied to the Holy Knights through his past with Gunko and his entire vibe and attire and everything. If that's gonna turn out to be the case, first of all, pretty cool. I'd be down for that, Brook being very important, but there's also another level added to all of this, because I don't think it's a coincidence that this info was all dropped during the Elbaf arc, the same arc we see a frozen area known as the Underworld in Elbaf as well. And yes, I also haven't forgotten about Venus Juro, who can seemingly use ice powers too against the Pacifista on Egghead Island. Now, he's a little bit more unsettling here because his ice isn't flashy or dramatic, he's no Tengen Uzui with crazy explosions or anything. It's much more cold, but in a very sterile way. Super precise, super creepy. The coolest of the Gorosei, I personally think. Hey, we can disagree about that too. Every attack he has, though, kind of feels like an execution being carried out with, utmost precision, and it left no physical damage to any of the Pacifista. They just shut down and froze from the inside out, which kind of feels like some soul-slicing nonsense to me, but do the Pacifista have souls? I don't know, you tell me. So, you can kind of see at this point, though, I think, why I found this idea so wild. Loki's epic attack was a frozen, hell-themed attack, and presumably, it was a very similar strike to the one that he used to kill his dad with. And if we keep count, that's now gonna be 3 attacks linked to death, the underworld, and the ability to target the soul itself. At least, I safely am assuming, I think, that's how Loki is overriding the immortality powers of the Holy Knights and Imu, which I think tracks the most, because I'm pretty confident that Oda didn't just casually drop a name like Niflheim for the funs of it. Alright, I haven't explained that one yet. Alright, in case you aren't aware, in Norse mythology, Niflheim is not just a cold place, it's one of the oldest realms in existence. Older than Midgard, the world, older than Asgard, where the gods live. It's a primordial world of mist, ice, and darkness that existed before creation even fully took shape, which kind of lines up with the kanji for Loki's attack, which reads as Origin World instead of Niflheim, but like, you know, Oda wrote it out in like the katakana, you know, when he like sometimes he writes kanji and, you know, the spelling for it is then different in the katakana alphabet that kind of romanticizes it. Like, for example, the One Piece has kanji that don't spell out One Piece, but then on the side next to the 4 kanji, like Oda writes One Piece, if that makes sense. So kind of like that. And really, it is just the same thing anyway, since Niflheim is the original world, the first one that crept out of the abyss of the universe. This sort of kind of reframes Loki's attack in a really important way for me too, because I don't think this is all about just raw destructive power. It kind of seems like it's more about negating existence itself. I mean, that sounds pretty badass if you call it like pretty cold, but that could be it. If Emo's immortality works by endlessly restoring the body, regenerating flesh, or even manipulating the soul maybe in some funky way, like the immortality surgery and some dark magic, then the only way to actually overwrite this thing is to just demolish the soul itself. I don't know, I feel like Loki might be on some Soul Eater vibes at this point, it seems, and I kind of wonder if he's gonna bust out some sort of soul resonance with Ragnar or something. That'd be kind of hype, not gonna lie. And while I think with Loki himself, it's very obvious how Norse mythology ties into him, it doesn't fully explain, I think, how this applies to the other characters like Venus Juro or like Brook. Like, surely before all of this Ragnarok Nordic stuff came into play, Oda would have had something else that he was pulling from for characters of different cultures, right? I mean, you should know better than anyone that Oda rarely establishes one mythological system for all of One Piece. It's just this sort of fondue of different things and cultures that shape the One Piece cosmology and worldview, right? And like its lore. Luckily, there are several different very interesting creatures where this icy hell soul punishment power does come into play, and who knew? They kind of perfectly line up with Venus Juro and Brook's powers as well. Alright, so for one, it shows up in Buddhist cosmology, for example, because you see, in Buddhism, hell is split into hot hells and cold hells, or at Taco Bell, it's split into mild hot fire and Diablo hells. Muy caliente. My stomach is really killing me. Anyways, the cold hells are often considered to be even worse than the burning ones. There are traditionally 8 cold hells, each more brutal than the last. Souls freezing solid, flesh cracking, bodies shattering into fragments over time. But the philosophical difference here is what really matters. Yeah, I know, philosophy, we have fun. We gotta do some here too. The hot hells, you see, punish passion, rage, hatred, violence, and obsession, right? Which is not really applicable here. But the cold ones, and sadly no, not the beers, they do punish detachment, denial, refusal, and spiritual emptiness. And if that doesn't sound like Emu, I don't know what does. I mean, they are an immortal ruler unchanged for at least 800 years, who seem to use this dark magic grimoire to give people the ability to literally deny death. Like, they've created a world frozen in progress, locked into their own messed up world order. In other words, they are a prime candidate to me to be punished by the Buddhist style of cold hell. But I also have something in the series itself that seems to point at One Piece's hell being a frozen wasteland and the key to overriding the abyssal magic too, because Dante's Divine Comedy, the story that Impel Down draws, of course, a ton of inspiration from, is also all about a frozen hell. Yes, we are very cultured today and talking about Dante's Inferno. You see, in Dante's Divine Comedy, the deepest layer of hell is not fire. It's instead ice, a giant frozen lake known as Cocytus. Cocytus. If you're a fan of the series Overlord, for example, that one probably screamed out to you already, since there is a giant frozen bugman named after the same lake who also uses ice powers. You can kind of tell that anime loves the Divine Comedy. It's not just One Piece and Overlord, but in Cocytus, traders are being trapped, immobilized, isolated, and at the very center sits Satan himself, frozen solid. Dante's logic here is quite brutal and also very elegant, dare I say, because the closer you get to the ultimate evil, the less emotion exists, the less movement exists, and the less heat and passion and anything that kind of gives life its beauty exists too. And Brooke, who seems tied to the Holy Knights and their Christianity-focused motifs, perfectly, I think, lines up to pull from actually both the Shinto underworld and the Divine Comedy's interpretation of hell from the more Christian context. Because, you know, they've got all the fun crosses and the saint titles and the holy god, you kind of get the idea. So what does all of that mean for Loki though, right? Is it just soul freezing that lets him straight up damage Emu and override the immortality? Well, I think sort of, but I also think there's another layer to this here, which is the abyss itself. You see, in all of these myths that we've now talked about, the hells are a very old aspect of the entire world, the universe, like nearly primordial in some situations even. So what if it's not just about damaging the souls, but that's achievable only because hell is close to the abyss, or maybe even the same place altogether? I kind of think, as weird as it sounds, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, for all we can tell, Emu is drawing their powers from a dark, inky abyss that is likely going to be some big secret from before the first One Piece world, even a sort of Big Bang moment where life was born from the abyss itself or something. So what if hell in One Piece, or the underworld, is where you need to be attacking from in order to do anything about the abyss itself, this primordial state of being? That would not only explain why Blackbeard, whose powers do seem similar to the abyss and darkness, considers his darkness powers to be the ultimate devil fruit power, but it would also open up a ton of ways for the Straw Hats specifically to attack Emu and the Holy Knights in the final saga and actually have a fighting chance here. Now this gets into another video I made quite a while ago. Was it last year? It didn't get too much traction, but I was actually pretty proud of it because, in case you haven't noticed, Oda has based pretty much all of the Straw Hats, pretty much without exception even, on different demon or devil entities from different mythologies. With Luffy, of course, we have the entire Sun Wukong connection, this like demon monkey who's challenging the gods. Then with Zoro, we have literally the king of hell, and Enma being the king of hell, and Zoro becomes the king of the underworld in Wano and everything and sees the Grim Reaper, which this moment to this day, just wild, no idea what's happening there. With Sanji, we have Diablo Jambe, we have Ifrit Jambe, he kind of like pulls his flames, probably kind of our inspiration, drawing them from hell as well. We have the Devil Child Robin, who, in with her devil fruit powers, I don't know, is Robin awakened here, by the way, when she turns into that crazy devil thing? I don't know, but it definitely has the demonic theme. And then, you know, you can kind of do the same thing with Chopper being like this monster creature already, this demonic, you know, like snow yeti thing. You have the like mechanic devil thing with Frankie. We have like this weather witch theme with Nami, and so on and so forth. You kind of get the theme. All the Straw Hats have a demon and Usopp, I almost forgot. The most interesting one, Usopp is based on a Tengu with the long nose. Yeah, the same one that, you know, you see the masks often, and Oden's father, Sukiyaki, was wearing one in Wano. That's what Oda based Usopp on. So my point here is that all the Straw Hats technically have underworld demonic connections that Oda could kind of use to introduce fresh powers for them that could then be used to actively attack the abyss. So it could be that Zoro has like some Shinto god of the underworld sword slash, and Brook already has it, obviously, right? Luffy has like some crazy Sun Wukong demon monkey thing going on, and then Sanji has like the hell flames that he can use on his leg, etc, etc, etc. Wouldn't that be pretty sick? Like all the Straw Hats, you know, Luffy being a D member and so on and so forth, they get like the actual devil powers to fight the abyss, kind of like Loki does. Pretty rad if you ask me. I don't know, maybe I'm just like very excited about this and you're not, but just felt like sharing it with you. And since we're specifically speaking of Emu here, let's shift a little bit into Emu mode for this chapter, because they revealed something very surprising and very crucial in chapter 1171 as well that we need to talk about. Oh, there's the title card already. Oh. So, the big scary ghost woman is scared of Loki, huh? Well, I mean, I guess we still don't know if Emu is technically a woman. It might be a guy. I made a thumbnail for this video. I'm not sure if you're seeing it because we're A/B testing, but one of them is a dude, because I thought, why always women? Like, I mean, he could be a guy, but I kind of like pushing that agenda. It's so much more fun thinking that Emu is a woman. And as you can also see in that thumbnail version, odds are that they are kind of like the dwarf in the flask from Full Metal Alchemist at this point. But hey, like, a man can still hope that Nefertari di Lily's body is covered in shadows and secretly hidden inside that shadowy God King somehow. Anyhow, whatever or whoever they are, they freak the heck out in chapter 1171, and that fueled me in a good way. I needed to see them, like, crash out a little bit, even though they do crash out a lot, but honestly, after the God Valley flashback, I was kind of starting to lose hope in any chance of Luffy walking out of Elbaf in one piece alive right now without any godly interference. Because I mean, come on, seriously, they were making Zebek, Roger, Garp, and all the future Yonko look like a bunch of toddlers fighting an adult, which I happen to know a lot about. Don't ask me why or how.
What do you mean by that?
It kind of seems like the cursed Prince of Elbaf is able to make Emu quiver and quake in actual fear? We like it. It kind of feels pretty nice that Emu is now shown sweating and lashing out at the Gorosei when they recommend sending more Holy Knights into Elbaf, which, dare I say, kind of not a bad idea to send more Holy Knights into Elbaf. Probably would have been a good idea at that point, but since God Mu is actually physically or solely harmed when a Holy Knight manages to die, which clearly doesn't happen very often, or often enough at least for the Gorosei to know about this weakness, it was kind of similar as a reaction to when Joy Boy unleashed his mighty Haki through the Emeth Knot, which directly affected the Gorosei too, specifically the ones who had traveled to the island through the abyss, canceling both their teleportation and their transformation. Now that recoil to me very clearly shows off a key flaw in Emu's mystical powers that I think were very desperately needed. So, what's going on here? My immediate thought is that Emu actively is sharing a part of themselves with the advanced Tier 2 and especially Tier 3 Covenant Pack users. We do know from the Herald flashback now that only 13 very lucky fellas are allowed to be fully tethered to Emu's true shadowy wizard money gang spellcasting powers, and my gut is kind of telling me that there are two ways that this could be harming Emu when they kick the bucket. Number one, feedback damage. And this is kind of the ideal scenario for the Straw Hats and company right now, because the best way that I can, try and explain this is imagine when you're holding a baseball bat, right? If you hit baseballs, that's really no problem. You kind of exert your power through the bat and hit the ball in the sweet spot, sending the ball flying. I know nothing about baseball. That's how I think baseball works. In this case, Emu is the player and the Holy Knights are the bat, kind of enacting their evil, dirty baseball deeds like the Chicago White Sox. But Loki is pretty much Shohei Ohtani on the Dodgers, who, by the way, my God, is Shohei Ohtani deified in Japan? All right, I need to go on a little rant here. Okay, just for a second, I'm very sorry. In case you don't know who Shohei Ohtani is, he is probably the best baseball player in the world right now. Even I know that as someone who's pretty much a very strong contender of soccer as the best sport in the world, but boy oh boy is that man everywhere. I like to play a game when I travel back to Japan, which is how many seconds does it take me to run into Shohei Ohtani at the airport? The answer to which is usually somewhere between 5 to 20, because you walk out of the airplane and there is a giant poster of him drinking tea or doing something. So funny. He's everywhere, and I'm kind of tired of him, I gotta say. I'm sure he's a great sportsman, but yeah, can we stop with the Ohtani? Okay, anyway, back to the video. So what you need to know, Shohei Ohtani is basically the true hero of the LA Dodgers right now, and in this analogy with Emu, what's happening is that Emu is swinging their bat, but Loki is swinging his insane hammer Ragnir right back at the bat, clashing instead of launching a ball, and since Emu's bat isn't stronger than Ragnir, the squirrel hammer, it's sending some massive feedback up the bat straight into Emu, hurting them and destroying that Holy Knight which I guess in this case is a bat in the process. Fun fact, this is a simple physics principle known as harmonics. The frequency that Emu and their pawns are operating at is a very specific frequency, and that's getting overwhelmed by Loki and Ragnar's very intense power, and it's not the first time that this has been the case in One Piece either. Haha, because Wano, longest arc, kind of crazy how long that's already ago that this happened, but Ryo, remember that? Advanced Armament Haki operates in a very similar way as it sends the Haki deeper into the enemy, bypassing their hard exterior and resonating inside the body to deal damage. Now like this. There's a lot of water in there, but you get the idea. So if this is the actual case, it gives me a lot of hope for characters like Luffy, Zoro, Shanks, Yamato, and really any other actual heavy hitter on the crew or on Elbaf right now or coming to Elbaf to actually have a good chance to destroy a Holy Knight in the future. Not Sanji though. He's just gonna be carrying my goat Scopper to the battlefield so that Scopper can do it instead. But there's also a pretty good chance that Emu's taking damage in a much less detrimental way because the Abyssal Covenant might be acting as a sort of pipeline to transfer Emu's powers to the Holy Knights and the Gorosei. In this case, think about it more like a blood transfusion maybe, and inside Emu's arm is one needle and inside the Holy Knight's left arm is another needle. And if you rip the Holy Knight out, it's just gonna yank the entire Emu side needle as well. And I don't know if you've ever had a needle ripped out of your arm. I haven't, but I kinda assume it hurts like hell. Now, if that is the situation, then Emu probably just needs to heal a little bit and then will be good to go completely. The big problem with that option, I think, would be that pretty much all of the Gorosei and Holy Knights then, would need to be defeated at a very quick rate in order to do anything and weaken Emu at all. At least in that scenario, I feel like that would make the most sense, but it could work a couple of other ways too, of course. Maybe you have a good idea, let me know in the comments. Like, maybe Emu is operating on Shadow Clone Jutsu rules and they split their powers equally amongst all the user of the Covenant, and that recoil of their power being pushed back into them so fast is what actually hurts them, or they just need a ton of time to regenerate from that. So like, Emu is only at like 13/14ths of their full power when a single knight is fully slaughtered or something like that. And actually, this doesn't even answer another question that I've been having recently, which is, why does immense Haki always seem to overwhelm Emu? Like, sure, we know that it's literally willpower clashing, right? And, getting overwhelmed does seem to hurt. So it's not to say that it doesn't make sense that Emu always reacts poorly when big Haki hitters appear, but like, Emu's Haki is also pretty insane, I think we can say. Arguably more insane than Joy Boy, since they somehow beat them and a whole army way back during the Void Century. We even see this in the manga because when Emu shows up to Elbaf, their Haki extends past the actual manga frame, and Joy Boy's Haki knot, which is quite crazy, stayed inside the borders. Kind of fun fact. But Emu's went out of the lines is what I'm trying to say. That power is normally reserved for some powerful enemies like 3 to 5-year-old children with their crayons, since they never color in the lines. From an outside perspective though, this kind of makes me think that Emu is a true monster. So why is it that Emu then seems so much more sensitive to Haki on their own tier? Like, Joy Boy's Haki shook them more than, say, Luffy and Kaido's Haki shook each other. Now, I guess you could kind of speculate that it wasn't so much the Haki itself that blew, Emu away, and more the fact that he felt Joy Boy's Haki for the first time in 800 years and had some PTSD moment. That could very much be what's going on here. And with Loki, it's actually that there is like a mental toll to it, not a physical one. Like, or if it's not PTSD, could it be that, whatever the Abyss power is just very sensitive to Haki, and that's why Kaido said to Luffy, who is like the Joy Boy, Emu expert or something, that Haki is supreme to everything because Haki can actually interact with the Abyss. I mean, Conqueror's Haki we know already does to a certain degree. I still like to think that there are levels to Haki that we just haven't seen in the story yet that Luffy still needs to unlock. That could be one thing. Or maybe for Loki specifically, I don't know, maybe it's something that just hurts them mentally, not physically in that sense, and, they're just very sensitive to it specifically, or maybe they're just scared because they can kind of sense some people climbing up to their own level, and Emu's just freaking out, seeing that people are actually reaching the same power levels that they had to overcome during the Void Century or the First World, and, kind of fearing that the big battle that was prophesized, that I would assume Imu knows about it. Like, Imu is very much aware that Joy Boy was planning something for the future. That's the whole reason they tried to erase the entire history, I assume. They're kind of freaking out that people are reaching that level where they're feeling, oh, the final battle might be actually coming, even though I tried everything to make sure this doesn't happen and people don't learn about it. And maybe if they're just this actual black int blob, Haki just works better on their physical body, and that's why they usually just in Marijua and just like possessing people otherwise could also make a lot of sense too. Now, since we're already getting into the very dirty details here, I also did have a little bit of beef with Imu in chapter 1171 I needed to air out, because straight up, man, Imu's reason for not dominating Elbaf is low-key kinda dumb. Like, they say the only reason they weren't taking over Elbaf is because by nature they are a mindless warrior nation, and without Herald to lead them, who was this crazy anomaly, they would end up destroying the world government from the inside. But then, like, no, that literally makes no sense at the moment. Imu just went to Elbaf and Domi reversed them, even going so far as declaring Dorian Bragi as their new kings, who are the most naturally violent dudes I've ever seen. They fought each other for 100 years, super casually. So you're telling me that it's okay to Domi Reversi the giant warrior pirate captains, but it wasn't okay to bring them into the world government for some reason? I don't get it. Like, generally, what's the difference? Am I missing something? Like, if I'm missing something, please tell me, because I don't get it. Like, is this more something about the politics, as in taking them in without the Domi Reversi would eventually tear them apart from the inside? But then, like just Domi Reversi them from the start, right? It seems like a pretty clear-cut solution to me. Seems to be pretty effective. But maybe that's because we lack information still, of course, and this actually is showing us a little bit something about the Domi Reversi power too that we don't know quite yet. Some weakness or some complication or special way that it actually works. Like, this might subtly confirm the Domi Reversi theory that's been floating around about it only working on someone in their homeland. This kind of stems from the fact that one direct translation for Domi Reversi means return home, and so far, funnily enough, it's only been seen working on people in their homelands. Zebek was from God Valley and got transformed on God Valley too, as were the other Davy clan family members that got transformed, and all the Elbafians were Domi reversed on Elbaf so far, so we've yet to see any character Domi Reversi anywhere but their homeland. So maybe Imu can't Domi Reversi people outside of their home, and if they leave, they can just purge that devil power, maybe? I gotta say, that'd be pretty sad for Zebek, since all Roger and Garb would have had to do is get him off the island to just purify him, throw him into the ocean, or maybe it's not that simple, I personally feel, and if they leave, they just die. That might make more sense and could also help raise the stakes at the end of the arc right now, because more people are probably gonna get Domi Reversi'd, I just assume. Like, Luffy, Loki, and the crew might need to leave Elbaf invaded by the Devilish Giants until they can break the Reversi some other reason. I mean, we talked before about Gear Reversi potentially for Luffy, and maybe Luffy either getting a Domi Reversi power himself, or much more likely that Gear 5 Luffy, like the Nika form and Joy Boy, had some sort of power that actively reverses Domi Reversi, so kind of how Imu flips game pieces from the game Reversi into black to his side, Luffy can flip them into white. Or maybe Luffy has a power that does the opposite and he can just purify either Dorian Bragi, or he can, like, liberate Gunko maybe, right, from their memory lock that Imu has imposed on them, and kind of play that game with Imu, because otherwise why would Oda set it up as a board game reference? Makes sense if two people play. Luffy would be the clear other person to be able to do that. Though I also want to point out that another translation for Domi Reversi is Return to Origin, which is really interesting now that we've seen Loki bust out the Niflheim attack, which is also translated as Origin World. Yeah, we talked about that earlier. Remember, like 15 minutes ago or something? Yeah. You've been watching this video for a while, but we're almost done. Don't worry. Just something odd I noticed as a coincidence, and it might hint at the Abyss and Hell being the origin world like I was talking about earlier. Just some food for thought, but we should now shift into the next section here, because I've been itching to talk about Luffy since he is finally back in the story, it has been over half a year. Yeah, it's been quite Luffy-free for a while, and I'm quite happy whenever we get our protagonist back in the story. Honestly, man, thank the Sun God himself, we are finally out of the Loki and Harold flashback. I've been really loving and digging the cool lore reveals and obviously some peak moments like Zebek's reveal and God Valley and like the Shank stuff. But at this point, maybe you feel that way as well. I'm just kind of living it up here being back in the modern era. So bless Nika, since chapter 1171 does end by yanking us straight back into the present. It's like that moment you dip into a hot tub, right? That sweet, warm hug of water wrapping around you like a tender lover. And don't get me wrong, flashbacks are very great, very important. I live for the One Piece lore, but when it was presented as 3 minutes that then became half a year of my real life, you kind of start itching a little bit. Like literally, I was getting hives everywhere. I needed a dose of vitamin Monkey D Luffy, and immediately we get one of those moments that remind me why One Piece still hits so hard, so much better than many other mangas, even after all these years. So, Hajruden releases Loki, the chains come off, and what's Luffy's reaction? That big, stupid smile I missed. The one that Mihawk warns everyone about since it's just so dang infectious. I don't know if you can relate to this. To me, this is just such an earnest peak One Piece moment. Like, not peak as in epic, yeah, just like truly a staple moment of a good One Piece arc. Generally, it kind of cracked me up seeing Luffy literally camp out on Loki's shoulder to watch him kick some butt. It's like a little brother watching his older brother play some video games, except the age gap here as well. More problematic in the real world, but kind of totally chill on the blue planet. It's very clear that Luffy wants Loki on the crew. I hope I am not crazy saying that, and I am absolutely here for it. Again, I mean, I could go on a whole tangent again, but you know how much I've been wanting Loki to join the crew. I just need that to happen, and I am, as you know, also very ready for Oda to not make that happen, just to play with my feelings a second time after it didn't happen with Yamato. Why can't you just give us nice things, Oda? But arguably one of the cooler moments for me in the chapter was also the Sanji-Scopper-Gaban interaction. Sanji and Scopper connecting feels very natural, probably because they occupy the same narrative role across 2 generations. They're the third wings of their respective pirate kings, the one who fills the gaps, smooth things over, and hold the crew together, you know, in ways that aren't always that flashy, but definitely very romantic and a little bit sexy. Really though, it just kind of leaves me hungering for a sick Zoro and Rayleigh combo. Please, immediately. I kind of love both of these characters an unreasonable amount. Like, Rayleigh is my favorite character. Zoro was my favorite character for a long time. I have 2 shrines for both of them, and the idea of them sharing even a short interaction is the kind of fan service that gets people going. And by people, I mean me. But now somehow I don't even think that that's the top combo for me, because honestly, all my little fanboy head can think about is that bonkers Luffy and Loki combo that's gonna happen, right? Because Luffy's rubber body plus lightning attack is already a very busted concept, we know, but we've only seen Luffy interact with enemy lightning before. Back in Wano, we saw him literally bend lightning himself like some sort of lightning bender. Way back in Skypiea, we learned he's immune to it entirely since Slim Shady God Enel here couldn't do a thing to my boy. But this would now be the first time we see Luffy intentionally teaming up with a lightning user on his side, and it kind of opens the door for some absolutely wild combo attacks if you really think about it. Rubber that stretches and redirects lightning like a tennis racket, or I don't know, maybe Luffy can use Loki's to make lightning accelerate his punches? Some lightning-infused Gear 5 slapstick nonsense is what I'm here for, and Oda could go absolutely feral with it, right? Like, which, wait a minute, why doesn't Luffy ever do this with Nami? Like, Eke, like, genuinely. What the heck's up with that, man? She's right there, and Zeus is with the crew now, and yet Luffy never goes, hey, Nami, can you just like blast me with lightning and let's just kind of see what happens? Because I can kind of control that stuff now. Why don't you do that? That would just make someone, maybe it's because their fighting styles don't naturally sync up, you know, in the same way. Or maybe Oda's just been saving the Luffy plus lightning ally combo for someone that would break the internet, since Nami probably would be cool, but not exactly legendary. if you know what I'm sorry, Nami. However, Loki definitely does fit that bill. Generally, this kind of feels like the intended payoff for all that lightning immunity setup from the way, like, back in, Jesus, 2003? I was 7. Sometimes I just forget how old One Piece actually is. But even after we hopefully get all that crazy power duo stuff, there's still a pretty freaking big question looming over all of this. What exactly is Loki's role gonna be forward after this arc? Is he joining the crew? Is he just traveling with them for a little bit? Is he a fleeting kiss in the wind? Will Luffy and Loki kiss? Will they do a big old smoochie and make Boa and Shirahoshi really jealous? The answer is no, they won't, but I do kind of hope that Loki runs with the crew after the arc is over. But honestly, I'm also a little bit torn. On one big hand, I want Loki to join the crew, like, really badly. I think that's clear at this point. But on the other, not that big hand, the one that always hurts, by the way, I do know that we've been burned by a character like Loki joining the crew before. Again, talked about Yamato already, not joining after, Wano. Killed my vibe very heavily. I was, like, very heartbroken. Such a great character. I really wanted her to join. And Loki's situation feels even trickier now because he is kind of like the true king of Elbaf. If Elbaf still stands at the end of this arc, which not guaranteed. Does it even make sense for him to leave? A king abandoning his people to go pirating, even in the final saga, is a pretty hard sell for me, but I can be delusional if I want to, and I still think it's gonna happen. And One Piece has never been a story that really treats rulership traditionally. Leaders do step down, like in Zou. Thrones do fall, like in Drum Island Dressrosa. Nations do change, and if Elbaf is fundamentally altered by whatever is gonna happen inevitably now, like Imu's demonic blaster cannon or whatever they're gonna do, Loki might have not a kingdom left to rule. And in that case, traveling with Luffy, even if it's just for a little while, will be essential and so much fun, especially if his role isn't crew member, even though I want it to be, but more some sort of cosmically, like, intertwined ally who sticks around with them because the vibes are right, and then maybe they'll even kiss. Especially with all the Mosa stuff, if they actually turn out to be Shirahoshi as I think, it could give us a little bit of a direction of where the story's headed, since surely Loki's gonna want to save her from whatever she panicked about, and Luffy of course will do too if it's somehow revealed that she is Mosa to the crew too, but let's just not get ahead of ourselves here. They still need to clash with Imu first, which is not a, small thing. And to do that, Luffy and Loki must still escape the underworld. And that's why this chapter feels so refreshing. We're out of a flashback and the engine is running at full steam ahead. Gear 5 Luffy and Loki's Nidhogg nonsense are on the horizon, and the third world is coming to an epic climax soon. But if the third world is about to end soon, what about the second world? The era of Joy Boy, Imu, Lily, Loki's and Shirahoshi's ancestor. What happened then? Well, if you want to see what I think probably happened during the second world in the Void Century, but in a much more fun storybook style of video that is very different from what we usually do here, you should watch that video right here. It's a lot of fun. I had so much fun working with everyone on my team to make this one happen, and it's just a totally different vibe. So I really love how it turned out. I had so much fun working with everyone on my team to make it happen, and it's just a totally different vibe. It's kind of like a theory, but not. You'll figure it out. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Thanks so much to all of our fantastic Patreons. Forgot to plug the Patreon this video, but it's been so long. Support the Patreon if you haven't checked it out yet. And otherwise, thanks so much, and I will see you in the next video. Actually, I'll have one on Tuesday.